Welcome to A2Council Update, a recap of the Ann Arbor City Council meeting on April 1st, 2024. This meeting included comments and discussion about expanding the Greenbelt district and changing administrative process, changing the standard of review for measuring the impact of new developments on transportation, rezoning 6 parcels at Church Street to allow a 17-story building, establishing a new city department to buy and sell property, directing policy changes to reduce public process and review of new development, lobbying for changes in state law to permit more tax breaks for private development, and preparing a city charter amendment to reduce the number of votes required for the city to buy and sell property. This is the voting chart for the council meeting on April 1st, 2024. There were 3 absences: Mayor Taylor, Councilmember Ghazi Edwin from Ward 3, and Councilmember Harrison from Ward 1. For Ghazi Edwin, this was her 9th absence. For Harrison, it was her 5th absence. They have both served for less than 18 months. This week, all agenda items were approved unanimously. You can find this voting chart and more information about this meeting at A2Council.com. Like and subscribe if you would like to see more content like this. The meeting included a presentation from Stephanie Carter, Chair of the Independent Community Police Oversight Commission, or ICPOC.
We had planned to have our Meet the New Chief event in April, at our April meeting, but we need more time. So please, if you would put on your agendas now for May 28th. We're inviting the entire community, everyone here as well, to come out and meet Chief Anderson face-to-face.
After introductory remarks, public comments, and staff explanations, Council discussed agenda items for about 90 minutes. 20 people signed up in advance to offer public comments. 13 people spoke to topics on the agenda. The consent agenda this week included 14 items and expenditures of over $20 million. Nothing was pulled for discussion. The consent agenda was approved unanimously. After a brief introduction, Council unanimously approved ordinance amendments that will expand the Greenbelt district, eliminate a cap on administrative expenses, and give the city administrator discretion to waive a 2% cap on impervious surface. Council then considered a rezoning and supplemental regulations for a proposed development at 711 Church Street. A developer has requested the rezoning of 6 parcels from R4C to Planned Unit Development, or PUD. If the rezoning is approved, 6 parcels at Willard and Church Streets will be combined for a 17-story development with 273 apartments and storage for 400 bicycles. The developer has agreed to make a contribution to affordable housing, or payment in lieu, equal to 17% of units. Earlier in the evening, commenters spoke to the issue.
And it is against the R4C zoning regulations that apply to this neighborhood. The professional staff of the city's planning department has recommended that the proposal be turned down.
This should have been upzoned by now, but for the delay to the comprehensive plan.
I am a member of the House Corporation Board of Alpha Delta Pi sorority at 722 South Forks. We are opposed to the proposed change for the PUD for 711 Church Street.
We need multiple developments of this type, and we need them as soon as possible.
I worked on the petition against the 711 Church Street PUD, which now has over 250 signatures on it. Let me remind you that the 250 people who signed this petition are the voters. We are your constituents, not the developers. We are your kids' teachers, your doctors, your nurses, your realtors, your artists, your daycare workers, your professors.
This will add a significant number of units to our local housing supply. That in itself is a benefit to our city. We
should not let this great project be ruined by red tape.
The high rents in these buildings have made them attractive investments. They return a reliable stream of profits for large asset management firms, and buildings are getting taller and bigger in order to provide the rate of return that investors expect. They do not care about the impact of a 17-story building on the Towsley Children's House, or that the building is 10 times the current zoning, and that it does not qualify for a PUD or meet our sustainability goals.
This is not how city planning should be done, nor should the city remake its previously approved planning documents through such single-site spot zoning.
I think it's a measure of how dysfunctional our city government has become that we have to say out loud the council should not approve a development the planners have rejected. Recent history with 721 Forest and the proposed Sports Illustrated Hotel show that the city, and I have to include most of the administration, sees no problem with carrying on these negotiations for PUD zoning changes out of the view of the public. The planning department is ignored, and developers are seen as more important than residents.
In a memo to the Planning Commission, city staff recommended denial of this rezoning request because the project fails to provide unique community benefit for approval as a planned unit development. In February at the Planning Commission, city staff suggested an increase in affordable housing contributions from the developer. Planning commissioners debated what price should be paid for the rezoning.
Mr. Leonard is giving us some information virtually and calculated that the 6 units would represent 2% of the overall units and would increase the affordable housing contribution in lieu to 17%.
I know it's throwing money at it, but 20% affordable or payment in lieu, either one. But I will not vote yes on this if the percentage of affordable housing is not increased.
Will you make an amendment to this amendment to go to 20, or are we discussing it between 17 and 20?
I think requesting a total of 20% affordable housing, payment in lieu or floor area is not unreasonable.
Ultimately, the Planning Commission sought to negotiate price directly with the developer.
So my question is an additional 3%. How does that, do we have a number on that?
I mean, if the petitioner doesn't like this and we vote for it, they can try to get council to take it out, or they can say we can't do the project. But do we go back and forth?
And I would like to know from the petitioner if they have something to say about it.
To clarify, are you agreeable to 20%? Is that what you were saying yes to?
Can I say that we have all the construction costs worked out at this stage? No, that would be unwise of us. We still have a lot of project to develop.
A majority of the City Planning Commission, including Council Liaison Lisa Dish, voted to deny the rezoning and supplemental regulations for 711 Church Street. Ahead of this week's meeting, staff shared a script for Councilmember Dish to read in proposing amendments to the supplemental regulations.
I want to amend it. Councilmember Dish, want to amend it. I don't know. I've never done this before, the amendment thing. You should have language.
Councilmember Dish recited a staff memo describing amendments that lower the standard for LEED certification, eliminate specification of materials, clarify allowable height to permit a double story, and add geothermal technology for a modest proportion of the building's energy use. These new terms were adopted by friendly amendment without a vote. Council voted on a 5th amendment to reduce the developer's obligation to fund public art.
The developer asked to reduce that to $50,000.
Councilmember Cornell, who is employed as the director of the Ann Arbor Art Center, defended the decision.
I think if we're talking about it being a public benefit, being something that beautifies that part of the community and creates an impact, that budget is sufficient.
The amendment was approved unanimously. Council discussed the main motion for rezoning and supplemental regulations for 711 Church Street.
The payment in lieu of, is greater than the 15% that's required by our ordinance. It's at 17%. It's going to contribute $250,000 to public restrooms in the downtown. That's huge as well. That's a shortage that we've identified.
You see people commenting on Reddit, I'm so sick of the housing crisis here.
You know, the more of this housing that's built, and it will be used, even though it's very expensive, it will be used.
Council voted unanimously to approve the rezoning and supplemental regulations for 711 Church Street at first reading. At a future meeting, it will be the subject of a public hearing and final approval at second reading. Council considered an ordinance amendment that changes how the impact of proposed new developments will be assessed. A measurement of traffic impact is removed in order to consider and acknowledge multimodal transportation. Council discussed the ordinance amendments for about 5 minutes.
It places a focus on traffic congestion that I don't think is all that helpful, especially when we're talking about development in the city.
Council unanimously approved the changes at first reading. At a future meeting, it will be the subject of a public hearing and final approval at second reading. Council then considered 4 resolutions, all related to the advancement and acceleration of more development in the city. These were added to the agenda late on Friday afternoon ahead of Easter weekend. All 4 resolutions are based on an 82-page document prepared by Deputy City Administrator John Fournier. This document was presented to Council in December 2023 and discussed at one work session in February 2024. An appendix to the report explains a methodology for stakeholder engagement that included developers, consultants, and contractors. Council discussed the first of these resolutions, which directs the creation of a new city department that will lead property acquisitions. The resolution endorses the Fournier report, referring to how it will provide better customer service for developers. Earlier in the meeting, residents offered general comments.
The reforms suggested by the report and the proposals in front of you tonight will go a long way toward addressing many of the issues that keep turning up in our city.
Thank you. If more housing is not developed within the city, then it'll develop outside of the city, leading to more congestion, sprawl, and property taxes going to other jurisdictions.
Council discussed the resolution for less than 10 minutes.
This office will spearhead efforts such as strategic property acquisition, support for underutilized properties, supervision of major land developments, and small business support.
We've seen in our initial budget forecast kind of what the future potential revenue shortfalls coming in the future. And I think one of the few mechanisms that we have to change that forecast is greater economic development that increases our tax base.
It will be important moving forward to prioritize the various initiatives that we are approving tonight to assess what our in-house staff has the capacity to achieve, and as others have also mentioned, to see a proposal in the upcoming budget process to fund additional contract hiring to move this important and urgent work forward.
Council unanimously approved the establishment of a new city department to buy and sell property, and directed the city administrator to fund and staff it. Council then considered a resolution directing staff to prepare ordinance changes that will eliminate stages of review and public hearings for proposed new development and reduce developer obligations to make improvements. In discussion, Council asked for confirmation about how quickly changes might be implemented.
This is very meaty. 13 individual, well beyond that, resolved clauses. It asks for a lot. I would appreciate clarity. Some of these are very clearly asking for changes to the UDC.
At the conclusion of this meeting this week, I will be talking to our planning staff, Brett Leonard, Derek Delacourt, and we will be penciling out what our work plan is to achieve the things in the resolution.
Council emphasized the need to reduce costs for private developers.
And so through this process of streamlining and reducing those hiccups in the system, we can both reduce the cost of what's being built and allow more housing to be built more quickly.
We've heard about how expensive it is to build, and the reality is we need to find ways to make this more affordable to do the right thing.
Council unanimously approved the resolution directing staff to prepare ordinance amendments and policy changes to reduce process and review of new development in the city. The resolution directs that these policy changes be communicated to Council by December 2025. Council then considered a resolution directing policy changes to incentivize and fast-track developments that are all electric. Developments eligible for fast-tracking would require less public process and review before approval. Additionally, the city will lobby the state to allow Ann Arbor to provide more local subsidy and tax breaks for market-rate development. Earlier in the evening, a public commenter addressed these changes.
This proposal for fast-tracking, fee waiving, tax abating, TIFing, and waiving planning commission review is all wrong. We have builders here that have gone electric on their own, as they all should. But if this goes forward, many will try to feed from the public trough. We do not want taxpayers to subsidize such developers or to smooth the process for them. If we grant the staff review cookie, we also cut out planning commission review and its benefits, including public comment, to reward developers for what they should be doing anyway. We have better options than normalizing gas, subsidizing developer profits, and cutting out planning commission, options that don't violate state law. Last year, the Cambridge, Massachusetts City Council amended its energy benchmarking ordinance to require all large buildings to reduce emissions to net zero by 2035 or pay a compliance fee. That keeps new construction all electric. Here, we can't even get building owners to properly report energy use under our own 2021 benchmarking law.
Council responded.
And I appreciate the point that was made earlier about we shouldn't be giving out cookies to persuade people to do something it ought to be doing anyway. But as I think others have mentioned in a different, framing it slightly differently, but developers in Ann Arbor are competing for investment dollars against people who could invest in other cities where development is not as expensive as we make it. And they can get a higher return on their development investment dollar in those cities. They need to be big cookies. So this is the big cookie resolution.
Councilmember Ackman asked about how to fast-track more developments.
And it does not mention energy efficient. So I'm just kind of wondering why, well, and I think I'd also be okay with just amending number 3 to say create a fast-track approval process that prioritizes developments that are fully electrified or, I'd like to explore both of these things.
Sure.
By friendly amendment, Council expanded the category of development eligible for fast tracking with reduced public process and review. Council unanimously approved the resolution directing staff to prepare ordinance amendments and policy changes to fast track both electric and energy efficient developments. The city's lobbyists are directed to push for changes in state law so that Ann Arbor can offer more tax breaks to market-rate private development. The resolution directs that these policy changes be communicated to Council by December 2025. Finally, Council considered a resolution directing policy change to make it easier to buy or dispose of city property. The city administrator will establish a funding source for these activities. Additionally, Council will form a subcommittee to prepare a charter amendment, lowering the threshold for approval of property sales, leases, and acquisitions. The city charter currently requires an 8-vote supermajority to approve any purchase, sale, or lease of city property. Lowering that threshold to a bare majority will require a ballot question and community vote. 2 months ago, this 8-vote requirement effectively ended negotiations for a Sports Illustrated Resort Conference Center on city-owned property at the Klein Lot. In 2019, a previous council had designated and assessed this property for the development of affordable housing. This week, Council discussed changes for less than 10 minutes.
When I read about placemaking in this, the first thing that I think of is the fact that we have this beautiful river in the middle of our city that perhaps hasn't been, thought through completely what should go on it or how we should best, make use of this beautiful resource in terms of placemaking.
Council unanimously approved forming a committee to prepare a charter amendment to eliminate the 8-vote requirement for the city to sell, lease, or acquire property. The resolution directs that these policy changes be completed and communicated to Council by June 2025. The meeting adjourned at approximately 10 p.m. For more details about this meeting, visit A2Council.com.
Welcome to this week's A2Council Moment of Zen.
I've never done this before, the amendment thing. You should have language. I send it to you. I don't know if the clerk needs to, Mr. Gerhardt, you have an email from me earlier. Yeah.
Thank you.
I'll make sure this is in front of my, thank you.
Would you like to make a motion?
Oh, do I, okay.
Yeah.
Do they need the text?
It's coming.
Okay. Okay. Do I need to read the text?
It might be helpful to read the.
Yeah. Okay. So I move 5 amendments to the ordinance and supplemental regulations. So Amendment 1 is to replace.
Council member.
Sorry.
Just to, I think we should take these as separate amendments. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So one at a time, and then we'll vote on them. Okay. Yes. Thank you.